Hi, my name's Corey Meza, and I have a 3-year-old boy.
Hi, I'm Sean Hughes. I have a 2-year-old boy.
Awesome. So we're really excited to have this conversation just about being dads, raising kids that love Jesus, and the challenges that probably come up with that, as well as the joys and the things that, make you happier than anything in the world. And so thank you guys for taking some time out to do this with us. It's awesome.
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Our
Cool.
Excited.
pleasure. That's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that we're going to do this is we have a little bucket of questions, and I'm just going to pull them. I'll ask you guys some questions, and then you can feel free to jump in, take some time to think about it, and then just jump in and give your thoughts on whatever the question might be, and then I'll pull the next as it seems fit.
Sounds good.
Sound good? Okay, cool.
Let's go.
So the first question, this is good. How do you encourage your kids to develop their own faith rather than just inheriting yours?
This is an interesting question to ask me. It's really hard to say what is my son's and what is mine. He's 2, and how I parse. Is he borrowing from me? Is he keeping it himself? So much of his whole world right now is watching me do whatever it is that I do, the language that I use, the foods that I eat, the habits that I have, and he's copying me. And occasionally he'll catch up to me, and occasionally he'll find something that's just like, oh, this is my favorite book, or this is my favorite animal. And so I think I at this stage of fatherhood, it's just about being aware of how much he's watching me, being aware of how much he's noticing what I say and how I say it and what I care about. So in faith, like we pray before meals. I actually didn't pray before meals a whole lot before I was a parent, and that was just a routine that we came into. And now that we have someone at the table with us, that we're like, oh, we want to model this kind of rhythm in our lives. We want to rhythm that kind of a conversation. Now he prays. It's very silly and loose and free, but it's cherished and it's sweet. And sometimes he says, "No, I'm gonna pray."
Yeah.
So we're just trying to be mindful of how we hand off, starting just from the way he observes us and observes the way that we live out our faith.
Yeah, I have found that there are kind of vague moralistic ways to raise kids, and that they should be nice, they should be kind, they should have certain expectations on 'em. But then there's the Christian life, and there are certain very key elements that are like, no, it is not below the standard of what maybe is generally out there in the acceptable world. It's actually on top of it. And so probably the number one thing that we do in our household is talk about forgiveness and repairing relationship in an explicitly forgiveness oriented way, and try to orient that back. My son's a big physical kid, and so he'll act out sometimes, hit me, and like, oh, like we can't do that. Like, hurt daddy, like we're gonna separate for a minute, time out or something. And then like, hey, I need you to say you're sorry. We will use the word, you need to repent of your disobedience. We'll say words like that. Say you're sorry. Like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, daddy forgives you.
Yeah.
We are good again. Daddy loves you. Let's have relationship. We'll use the words forgiveness. Forgiveness is probably the most explicit thing that I can think of, because most of the time, even in our age bracket, we'll see parents with kids just like say, "Oh, sorry." When we're out at the playground, I've seen my son get like pushed by another kid, and we'll go through this exercise and just like, hey, go up to the kid. The kid will come over and say, "I'm sorry," and then I'll try my son like, "Yeah, say I forgive you," and just to watch that parent like look at like, oh my gosh, like forgiveness is way unexpected in what we do. Just people are not thinking about relational damage on the level of like, oh, I have to be forgiven for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes. And so we are trying from this very tender young age to think about how can we introduce behaviors and practices that would not make sense if we weren't following Jesus, who has forgiven us, and his forgiveness of us is the foundation of our standing with him as believers today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What role, just kind of as a follow-up question in all this, is you guys are talking about specific ways that you're both intentionally thinking about how to raise kids that love the Lord, develop their own faith by modeling it for them. What role, if any, would you guys say a broader community outside of you and your wives has when it comes to raising kids that love the Lord?
No. Yeah, great question. And it's such a vital thing. Like, even as us believers, we need the church to help remind us and guide us to know if we are being Christians or not. Like, there are so many verses about one another, and you can't really know if you're a Christian if you're not practicing it with other people. The Christian life does not make sense in isolation.
Yeah.
And so likewise to paths on the faith, my son needs other believers. He needs other men and women speaking to him in teacher ways and in help ways, pastoral ways. And he needs other peers to grow up with and see how they're dealing with it. Yeah. I need the same thing too.
Yeah.
I need to be in community. I need a multitude of counselors. I need brothers to come with me. I need sisters to come with me. And so my son needs the same thing. And yes, there's some age context things that are probably different between me and him, but
sure.
fundamentally, yeah, I think the principles are very similar, that you need community. You need people above you that are helping you grow. You need people alongside you that you can lock arms with and grow with. So absolutely. Yeah.
And I need fathers around me in a way, like whether that's peers or men who have been going through this for stages that are a lot longer than me. I can't just sit in a room and think about how to be the best father and then just do it. Like I'm a smart guy. I'm not that smart. And so I so deeply rely on the collective wisdom, the just like, hey, how hard was it to get up at 2 a.m. every morning for who knows how many years? Just all of that, like, community is so essential for my journey as a father. I don't know what I'm doing, but I learn how I'm doing it, and I learn what I'm going to do, both from the experience of being a father, but also because I'm surrounded by people who are feeding me and just, saying, hey, this is the journey. We're on it together, and I've been there, and things like that. I need that just as a parent. And then for my son, you don't learn how to be a kid by being around a bunch of grown-ups. You got to learn how to be a kid, by being around kids. And my son's at a developmental age where he's still just coming online to like play with other children. And it's appropriate that the parent is 5 feet away at all times. But as we're introducing how we play with other kids and what kids we want him to be around, we want him to be around people that are really different from him, that play differently, that speak differently. And we want people around him who can play in a way that gives him opportunity to be a follower of Jesus, if that makes sense. And he doesn't have the language to describe that yet. We barely have the language to describe that at sometimes, but it's just, you know, when you see it, how joyful it is when kids actually connect and forgive, like you were saying, and all that. Yeah.
Okay, one more, and then we can.
Yeah.
Okay. What? How do I say this? Like we live the world that we're in right now. You were just alluding to it, like the importance of your kids being around other kids that maybe talk differently, think differently, have different faiths. It's important. is there like a sense of you as a parent that has like there's like a, even if it's an unspoken bubble around your child of like, I want them to have that to a degree, or are you kind of the belief, both of you, that like, no, it's, we see the like a massive importance in our kids being around people that think differently, speak differently, believe differently, as almost like a tool for them to see different sides of God that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a leading question or not, but
Well,
I'll ask it anyway.
I'll bite. So there's different elements of diversity that I think I want to speak to. One is, so my son is of mixed heritage. I'm white. My partner Emily is white and Korean, and it takes a lot of intentional work in our family system to make sure that our son knows a part of his heritage, all parts of his heritage that we have access to at least. So food, language, which grandparents he has the closest relationship to, all of that is, we're really have to be intentional about being an intercultural family. Part of that also means we want to surround him with as many diverse cultural backgrounds as we can to fill his cup with just the joy of God's image of a diverse, multicultural kingdom.
Yeah.
When it comes to the diversity of belief or the diversity of religion or spirituality, I think when I look back on my own journey, I know at which points I needed to surround myself with like people, and at what points it was really important that I surround myself with people who thought differently. Both were really instrumental in my own growth. So if I'm going to do the same thing for my son, first I have to be humble and know I'm not always going to know.
Yeah.
I just not always going to know. But I have to read him and what his needs are. I have to read what's going to be appropriate at each stage, at each age, whether that's, hey, we need to get you a really close group of people that are trustworthy, or whether, hey, we want you to surround, yourself with people who are going to open up the way you think, who are going to challenge you. You really don't have a faith, I don't think, until you've tested it a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's going to come. So as a father, I have to let go of the reins a little bit at some point and assess that, watching him, attentive to him each step of the way.
That's good.
Yeah. If only the stuff that our kids were exposed to was like a curriculum for school, where it's like, oh, I know that in 3 months we're going to see this or have a conversation around this. I will plan for that test and study for that test. This is so relevant. Yeah, just the other day, my son loves Sesame Street. My wife and I, big old school Sesame Street fans. Fun fact: one of my wife's first dance with her dad at our wedding was a Sesame Street song. So that's how much my wife loves that stuff. Well, I put on a Sesame Street just song video. Some classics. C is for cookie.
Classics.
These, but then there was one that definitely, it was clear, came out maybe during the COVID era when race conversations was more online, because the kind of the theme or some of the lyrics from the song is like, it's not okay to tell someone they're to go based off what color they are. Like, that was like a line, because it's like, you can't tell Elmo to go because he's red. And then they have human actors singing along of like, well, you can't. It's like, okay, that's what they're singing about. I did not know that was going to come up in the thing. And so now we're in it. Like, now what are we going to do? Is this going over my son's head? Most likely. But it's now kind of it's not going over my head. And so if this comes back around into some conversation, as I was thinking about what you're talking about, I think if there's anything that I want to be ready for as a parent in the conversations, is making sure we have the right frame and narrative around what we're talking about. Because if the word diversity is a leading, loaded question for some people, but I've read Revelation. I know what diversity I'm looking forward to in the end. And so I don't have any fear of some of those things. And so if as we stumble our way through raising our child, and as we all collectively stumble through raising our kids, it's, hey, what are we focused on here? What are we believing ourselves about this? Because whatever we fundamentally believe underneath stuff, those unsaid assumptions, those unsaid beliefs, will bleed into the stuff that we actually do have to think about. And so, as we're consuming content, as my son is doing that, and I think it's just responsible as a parent to consume as much you can first, just to know what stuff's going on out there, and maybe there is stuff that your conscience is not okay with, and others, and there's a lot of personal decision in there that I would respect. But at the end of the day, I think the fundamental thing is, what is the narrative you're believing about kind of the meta conversation going around on anything, so that you know how to place that conversation, because the world outside of Jesus has no unifying framework. All these beliefs become fragmented kind of isms, whereas with Jesus, everything can kind of roll up into some aspect of the kingdom when it's healthy and kind of fully flourishing. And so if we can make sure our kids understand that, then we can, I think we have a much better shot of navigating the curveballs that come up.
Sure.
I also want to say, it can be tempting to think of giving Jesus to your children as like, here are my dogmatics. And I think dogmatics have their place. It's lovely to have I wouldn't mind if we had some catechism in our church. Like, if there's some space for that. Yet,
Interim pastor, if you're listening.
But what I'm giving my son is my love. And what he's going to get from Jesus is that love, but better. And even, it's tempting to think of like, okay, there are people who believe the same things we believe, and there are people who don't believe the same things we believe. When like just the three of us probably have some different beliefs about even within our own, faith tradition. And so instead of like breaking it down into like, these are the safe people and these are the not safe people, if we're going to really know each other by our love, like let's start there. Let's start with how we can love each other. Let's understand that there's some flexibility with some of these beliefs that we can disagree on. And then from that basis of like true compassion, true, value of human life, we can just find Jesus in the midst of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah, well said.
All right, let me grab another question. This is good. What does grace look like in your parenting, both giving it and receiving it?
Yeah, it is everything. It is every day. It is every moment. It is so necessary. Like, to remind myself, like on one end, to remind myself that my child is growing and does not know things and is wayward and controlled by his own inner man, his own man self, and to know that God responds to that with sacrifice, with giving of himself, laying down his life to redeem that. And so knowing that when my son is acting out, doing foolishly things, doing things that are sinful by act, then to know that it is God's kindness that brings us to repentance comes just blowing into my mind. Because as soon as I start to feel self-righteous or indignant about how my son is behaving, and man, I just wish if he would, just Holy Spirit right there, just like pump the brakes there. Hey, like so you were too, like, and so you are sometimes. So, just flooded with compassion for my son to be like, oh my gosh, he just doesn't know. Like, and, and even if he does, he is starting to understand consequences a lot better of if then than this, but even still, like, this is, it moves from, oh, he just doesn't know and I want to love him too. Oh, this is how my Heavenly Father responds to me, even when I do know. And so, just immediately decreases my blood pressure and decreases my harshness with my son, of just like, oh, this is not how my father would respond to me. And so I am not going to respond this way. Definitely takes a hot second to like breathe and let the, that reminder come into my brain. But, once it does, it's a whole different thing from like, oh my gosh, Taylor, I've told you 5 times. So, okay. Hey, bud, come here.
Yeah.
And so giving that, and then likewise receiving it, just knowing that God does not love me because I'm an awesome parent, but that because I trust Jesus and his goodness towards me, that I can fail forward and that God is always there. God is there at 3 a.m. when my son doesn't want to go back to sleep, and I would like nothing more than for him to go back to sleep. I have the Holy Spirit who I can immediately in that moment say, like, Lord, I need you. Please be here with me. And there are times I've remembered that, and there are times I have not, and I have then needed to ask for forgiveness and grace for handling things harsher than I wanted to as I look back at it. And like, Lord, thank you for forgiveness. Thank you for grace that I can keep trying this again, knowing, and I can keep doing this because my future, my salvation, my security is in Christ. And so this is not the thing that defines me. And so Christ is. And so I can really try with all my might to figure this out, knowing that ultimately my soul, my personhood is not dependent on it.
I love that. I think my son is the greatest grace I've ever received. Besides my own life. Besides my own being alive, I think he is the greatest grace. Because I think anyone who's had to go through the process of even just trying to become a parent knows what a gift it is. And you can't just will it to happen. You can't just decide. It has to be given to you. And that is hard, because sometimes that just doesn't happen on our time in the way that we think it's going to happen. But it's just, when it is given, it's a gift. And I want to say too, not everyone needs this gift to be complete. Maleness doesn't require being a father. I am me, regardless of whether I'm a parent or not. It also doesn't mean that everyone should strive for fatherhood. This is not what everyone needs to want in their lives. But for me, in my own life story, being given the grace of a child and knowing that I didn't sustain his life. I don't sleep for him. I don't eat for him. I don't laugh for him. He's just his own person that God sustains and fills with joy and fills with the will to live and all of these things. And I've been given the gift, the honor of being dad to him. I think starting from that point, every day is just like a gift. Every day's a gift. And that means when there's deficits in that gift because of his behavior or my shortcomings or just everybody's sleep deprivation or whatever, that is detracting from the abundance, right? That's not like my life is worse now. It's I've been given this huge gift. Today it's a little harder to receive, but it's a gift nonetheless, right? It's a gift just to have to have kids is um I mean, there's a whole human in the world right now who's walking around somewhere, and he's mine. I get to say mine. That's crazy. That's the grace to me.
That's cool.
Mm.
Yeah. I think it's one of the, like, growing up, I always thought of grace as like a strictly a theological term that was like in relation to forgiveness, like God's grace on my life is his forgiveness towards me. But then I remember, I can't remember who it was, but there was a pastor one time that kind of reframed it for me in terms of grace is actually God's presence in our lives. Right. And so that's very similar in tone to it, right? Like your son's presence, his very existence is grace.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of God's grace, his love, his compassion, his patience for you in your son's life.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
With like to kind of go back to like an idea of grace being forgiveness. I think sometimes of if grace is forgiveness, if part of grace is forgiveness, forgiveness comes when oftentimes there needs to be discipline, right? So, I was raised where I wasn't disciplined a lot. It was really easy. I was a kind of not a wild child, but I got out of a lot of things. I would be disciplined, but I could easily convince my mom to like let me off the hook. Can you guys both maybe talk a little bit? And with young ones, it may be different now for you than it will be in maybe 10 years. But when it comes to discipline and the role that grace plays in discipline, can you guys maybe talk a little bit about like your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that mean for you?
Mm-hmm. The word I use all day, every day are boundaries. He can hurt himself, and if there are not parameters around his life, then he can do serious harm.
Yeah.
And whether that's his behavior or just random acts happening, like just a lot of being a parent of a young child is just vigilance of where are the knives right now. Does he have access to the garbage disposal switch? Just like that. Those are moments of just like, how do I keep this person alive? Within that is, I think, him trying to find out where his safe zone is. If he's going to sprint for the edge of the cliff, that's him, having the exhilaration of sprinting, but it's also, is someone going to catch me right now?
Mm.
Is there someone making sure I'm safe right now? Is there someone looking out for me? And so when I find the boundary and hold it, it doesn't have to be out of, you're going to feel my anger.
Sure.
This is, hey, I'm keeping you here. And this isn't a discussion. This isn't negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
You can be okay with it. You can be upset about it, but this is where you don't get to go this close to the cliff. This is where we stop because I need you to know this is how you're safe. This is where safety lies. And I think that him growing up in that context of knowing where safety is and knowing that someone's looking after him, whether that results in bad behavior or good behavior, that's going to show up in my dad loves me.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to show up in my dad loves me.
Yeah.
Because it's not out of retribution. It's not out of, a sense of like, someone's coming for me. It's someone's looking after me. And I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to put the boundaries in wrong places sometimes, but I'm going to have to go back to the grace part for that too.
Yeah.
God reproves those who he loves. And you're not a son if he doesn't discipline you. And a couple key things that I've gotten to learn early in these innings is learning. There are kind of a dichotomy that I heard had presented me is like, was the outcome of this something that this was something that we needed more reps at, something you need to learn more of? When he spills pancake batter, 'cause we were making pancakes the other day, and he spilled like a good chunk of it. Was that because he doesn't know how to whisk? Well, yeah, because he needs to learn. He needs to learn that. Like, well, do I have to clean that up? Yeah. Like, did I make him clean it up? Yes. Like, but like, okay, it's because you need to learn how to do that. Like it's
Yeah.
okay. But then the other side of it is like, no, is this a safety thing? Is this a boundary? Is this a gosh, I wish I knew how to more eloquently say the dichotomy here, but it's more of those classical discipline things that we think of disobedience, kind of that genre there. And yeah, it is coming at it from a point of like me disciplining my son shows I love him. I'm caring for his future, trying to help him understand where life is, where good life is. That if I keep that as my forefront of what I'm trying to hit, that tends to help me figure out what I'm going to do. There's a book called Crucial Conversations, and one of the first tenet of you lose a crucial conversation when you lose your own motivation in it. Like meaning if your motivation in this is to win, to prove you're right, to do anything, you've already lost.
Yeah.
And so I think about this, that's been a key thing I think about when I look at my son and think or know that he needs discipline. It's like, hey, what's my heart right now? Like, one, he spilled pancake batter. Do I need discipline? Well, yeah, by like making him pick it up. Or the other day on the way home from church, he would put some like pencil in his mouth and was just chewing on it, not listening to mom or dad. Okay, so we are going to pull the car over. We're going to take this away and you're not getting it. And we're going to be very clear on this is what is happening. You have created this, you're not listening to mom and dad. You have to listen. Mom and dad are here to teach you what to do. And you're not listening. So you no longer get this opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, again, being clear on what our motivation is in discipline, being clear what our outcome we want in there, and realizing like you can take a beat as a parent. Like when the emotions flood on you, the emotion always urges urgency, and you just don't have to. Like, yes, you want to make sure you're being timely with it. Like if I went home and took my son's pencil stuff away from him and said, it's because you did something this morning.
Yeah.
It's going to be probably more confused. But like if he's yelling at me, he's screaming, if he's throwing something, I don't have to engage. Then I feel like that is a natural response because you're going to feel some things in the moment, but do discipline well, you have to remind yourself of what is the thing I ultimately want out of this. And if you can keep that front center, you're going to typically be more right than wrong. And even if you are wrong, you're wrong for a good reason versus a bad one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Can you share a moment when you felt God's presence or his guidance in your role as a father?
Man, this was a tough one. So the first week of my son's life, he was small. He was born 6 pounds, and he dropped to 5 pounds 6 ounces. And we're first-time parents, and my wife just went through the labor, and no one slept, and we keep bringing him back to the doctor for those very first appointments, and they're saying he needs to up his weight, and they're probably saying it really gently, but we're hearing it real loud. We're just stressed, and long story short, it was one of the hardest weeks of my entire life. We tried a bunch of different strategies, but I remember just late one night, my partner is in a complete state of disarray. I've been trying to hold it together for so long, and I broke down, and I just was praying to God for this to be resolved, for this to be over, and God just said, no. God said very gently, but clearly to me, no, you're going through this.
Yeah.
And at that point, I didn't know how much longer that chapter was going to be. I didn't know how it was going to be resolved. You know, it was in retrospect not as big a deal as we felt like it was, but our feeling was his life is on the line. Like it was dire, and God needed me to sit with that, and it honestly probably only lasted a few more days, but in that moment it was very clearly like, no, you're gonna go through the hard parts, and God is not, at least in that season, in that chapter for me, God knew that I needed to go through that and was not going to give me the reprieve that I was asking for. And that hurt, but it was also strange to receive that and go, okay, that's what God's saying. And I can't say that I was comforted, but it was a part of God's design for my emergence into fatherhood that I go through some hard stuff. And I am better for it.
Mm-hmm. Do you mind reading the question again?
Yeah. Can you share a moment when you felt God's presence or guidance in your role as a father?
Yeah, good. Yeah, my brain is one of those where it's like I hear the thing and it's like immediately I have that thing locked in. Whether like, okay, thank you, fast brain. I need slow brain to like make sure I think about that too. So I just want to make sure that the thing I locked onto immediately was like a good thing. But yeah, I'll preface this by saying like one of the beautiful things of parenting in this age is there are just so many grade A resources for parenting to bring other kind of trusted voices in to help your child learn literally anything. But
almost too much. It's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot.
My son doesn't ask for like character shows. Like there are shows where it's just like train videos for like 30 seconds and just like he just wants to watch trains, or learning videos because there's like a whole homeschool curriculum on like here's a 9-minute video on sharks. Like that's what he wants to watch. But the resource I'm specifically thinking about is the Biggest Story Bible. And we will watch that pretty regularly. He has a couple books about it also, but pretty regularly over breakfast, or just here and there. Maybe we'll be reading one of the books, and like they'll have a kind of kid version of a story in the Bible, really focusing on what is the gospel point of this story. He loves Jonah because the whale, but it always ends. What's the gospel point of Jonah? But the one I'm particularly thinking about this was we did watch one of the ones that's talking about kind of Revelation as a whole. Certainly doesn't go into like the dragons and the things like that, but the moment I'm thinking of is it's talking about the lamb who is slain, sitting on the throne, and that it's building up this moment of like, what's going to happen to this lamb? And it's talking about like the lamb has a wound and it's hurt. And my son turns and looks at me and is like, Dad, is the lamb going to be okay?
Oh my gosh.
And I just like, yes, son, the lamb's going to be okay. And I get to help my son figure out the deep nooks and crannies of his life and in this world that statement is so true. Like Jesus, the lamb who is slain, is going to be okay.
Wow, that's cool.
Both through the hard things, he's going to be slain. He was slain. Happened. Hard stuff happens, son. But also like he's going to be okay. And just to like see my son's concern and like concern and just, oh no, what is gonna happen? Like, oh son, let me tell you the gospel message. Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
Like, I got good news for you. And so just I hold on to that moment and think about it very often of getting to tell my son more and more as he gains cognitive function to receive the message of, yeah, our lamb is going to be okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool. There's a guy that we have in our church, one of our pastors, George, And he, you know, he's one of the most patient men, you know, that I've ever met. And when I think about, you know, the question of, you know, how has God revealed himself to you in your role as a father? Like it's really hard for me. George is not my dad, but there's so many moments just by interacting with him and even hearing him talk about his kids that I'm able to kind of like see how like God even reveals himself to me by witnessing how George has parented his kids and continues to parent them as they're in their 20s and 30s and they've started their own families. And the thing that always sticks out to me is just that he is so quick to forgive, to your point at the beginning, so quick to forgive. But the biggest thing is just his patient presence, you know? And I think that's something, it's strange to me how God, even removed from that family, how God can reveal to me his presence in somebody else's life and in the way that they raise their families. And it's just been really, really encouraging over the past few years just to witness that. So, and so to hear your guys' stories is also really encouraging there too. So let me grab another question real quick. Oh, okay. Here's a spicy one. Are there ways you're intentionally continuing or departing from your father's example? It's not loaded at all. Not at all.
I love that before you read that you were talking about a father that's not your father.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are so many different ways we can learn about what healthy fatherhood looks like. For me and my dad. So my dad was great. I had a great dad. One of my best friends, and he was a psychologist. He ran a nonprofit in the northern state of California. He was the head elder at our church. He preached on occasion. Really gregarious, magnanimous, like big person in the room. He was the kind of person who felt really beholden to his obligations and was obligated to more than he should have been. And it strained him more than I think he wanted it to show. My dad died of a heart attack when I was 21. And single worst thing that's ever happened to me. It changed the course of my life in a lot of ways. In a weird full circle way, I'm a grief counselor now, so I've had to spend a lot of time thinking about how that event impacted my life. I don't blame him for his death. I do wish he took better care of himself. I wish he valued his health more. Yeah. I wish he took on less stress. So I am not going to take on as much as he did. There's a lot that I really loved about my dad and I love about my dad. I mean, we still have a continuing relationship even though he's died, and we talk. There's a lot. I mean, when I play with my son, I hear his voice coming out of my mouth just because he's in me. And there's some choices that I'm going to make to prioritize my being available for my kids and for myself. You know, I want to lead a healthier life than the one he led.
Yeah. Kind of in fairness to my dad is not a Christian. And so to be here talking about fatherhood from an explicitly Christian point of view, my dad has kind of nothing to do with that. And so in some sense, like I have other father figures I am looking to say like, hey, how can I do that? How can I raise my kids like that? But in terms of some principles, I find myself more doing what my dad did in ways that, like, as much as I wish I could say I came up with it, like, no, I'm living out what my dad did. My dad is also very generous, and just if there was a thing we needed, we got it. And I did not come to realize how financially well off my family really was until kind of out of college and starting to put two and two together for some things. And when you try to do it on your out of college budget, you're like, wait, we went skiing how often?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what? And you start to make some connections. And so, like, I just love, I am very thankful for so many of the opportunities that I got to do. And my life is marked in so many positive ways from my dad in that. But yeah, also to understand that, like, on some ultimate things, like, I need to go somewhere else than my dad for. Love my dad, but my dad does not have the answers to life and godliness in how to follow Jesus. And so I will look to trusted men on that. But with my dad, I am so thankful for his willingness to be generous with his resources. And I know that that has come definitely into our family. And my wife and I have had to talk about that because she comes from a family where it was not common practice to let for as a small example, kids just get like their own meal at a fast food restaurant. It's like, I can get a kid's meal. Like that's all I always got. Like, and she grew up like, hey, you're getting stuff off the dollar menu and you and your two sisters are splitting fries. And like, so when we go out to eat and we were dating, it's just like, yeah, just you get your meal, I'll get mine. Well, I'll buy both of them. And just like, we're not sharing. I'm like, no. Like, why are we asking? Why are we talking about this?
Yeah.
Like, because like I never had that modeled, and so like I think that, and I'm very thankful for that. And so, and then the one downside I will say that I think my dad did lean on that a little bit too much to create relationship, almost in as a trying to be an olive branch of like, hey son, here's an Xbox, like you like that kind of stuff. But the heart of it, like the redeemed elements of it, I want to be as generous with my stuff as my dad has been generous with me.
Sure. Yeah, this question is interesting because we're talking about your guys' experience of raising small children, so it's you don't really have the foresight to be able to what are your kids going to say when they're sitting in these chairs and they're asked this question, right? But I think it does kind of spark that not the question, but it brings up the importance of being dads, of the importance of the role of the father in the home. And to a certain degree, I think that there's been, and I could be totally off on this, but I've gotten the sense that over the last 10, 12 years or so, like we've started to kind of get out of the more traditional view of dad being sort of like, oh, he's going to work and he's coming home, he's kind of disconnected from the family, and that's no longer acceptable. Men, for the most part, like have this idea, we get how important it is to be present in your kids' lives. I think about my brother, we didn't have a dad growing up. Well, we did, but he was off. He was gone. And now seeing my brother, who's got 3 kids, witnessing him do things quite literally the opposite of the way that my dad did. My brother is extremely present in his kids' lives, and extremely connected to every one of his kids that are very different. One's an athlete, one is really into band, the other is really artistic, and seeing him meet all of his kids in their different needs is really remarkable and healing in a lot of ways for me to just watch from a distance, to see my brother do that and go, oh man, it's possible.
Yeah.
But the importance of having or being a dad to your kids, I guess I'll ask it like this. Was there any trepidation or fear when you found out you were going to be a first-time dad of, am I going to live up to the standard that I have for being dad?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was that like for you guys?
Well, first the fear was a part of my journey as a father from the moment I found out we were pregnant, because there's so much you can lose. There's just so much at risk. It's a really risky thing to love someone. It's just risky. There's costliness involved when it comes to what you can lose, and that's just maybe that's the grief counselor speaking a little bit. So that fear is present. I think this is what really makes, I mean, there's so many facets of this, but one of the things that makes Christian fatherhood different is I don't have to be a perfect father.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you were talking about how much more time we spend with our kids these days than generations past may have. I believe there was a study done about how much time mothers spent with their children in the 50s when they were, you know, the typical nuclear family mold was they stayed at home, and how much working mothers spend with their kids now. And mothers who have full-time jobs now spend more time with their kids than those moms who were staying at home in the 50s. So just the expectations, certainly on moms, but definitely on dads too, about spending all your time heavily investing, truly like being a unit. I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful that there's we're holding dads to a different standard now. But I also want to relieve some of the pressure to be perfect, because I think probably no one knows better than my wife how imperfect I am. She has access to all those foibles and selfish moments and missed opportunities that I just am constantly having to be like, okay, at least no matter how awful I am, I'm not the end all be all father.
Mm-hmm.
He has a father that is perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm going to strive for that. I'm going to try to mold myself in the image of the father. But I mean, I could majorly ruin everything I have in my power to ruin, and God will erase it all.
Yeah.
The lamb's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a freedom to play there now, where it's like, okay, I'm going to try new things. I'm going to, you know, try new ways. I'm going to depart from the ways that my dad did things, even if they were well done, because I know it's you know, perfection's not attainable. So why try? I'm going to strive, certainly, but that doesn't mean I have to belabor myself under this expectation of like, I'm going to be the most present, most wonderful dad. I'm just not going to be. That's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A pastor I remember listening to says, fear says, what if? Faith says, even if.
Yeah. That's good.
And I have had some grief moments where I have thought about like this child I am holding, like, what if car crash?
Mm-hmm.
What if this?
Mm-hmm.
And just like your brain can make you go into some really dark places, and just to like think about that and be like, but then be like, so what would you do, like, Corey, if like that if the worst really did happen, then what? Like, and like, would you really, like, what would you really do? Would you walk away from Jesus? Would you like become a hermit and say goodbye to everybody? Like, what would you really do? And to have to like there's no way you could know. Like, I will know what I will do if I have to do something as hard as like that. But like, to think about it and just reckon on that, like, the Lord is good even if, just know that, like, like I will be sad. I will feel a lot of range of emotions, but like I know that there's redemption coming, there's a kingdom coming, and that even if the worst happened, that my God has an answer for that. Because the flip side of that is like an even worse proposition of like, well, God actually has nothing to do with this, or there's nothing else there. Is like, no, as painful and as real as that situation may be, and it's probably has been real for many people. Like, the alternate explanation is there is no God and you are on your own here is so much worse. And so, yeah, just to think like, even if X happens, like God, like, please help me, please keep me close to you, even if, John Piper has a really good sermon, back, like he was giving at a rally back in like the 70s or 80s or something, and he talked about giving a eulogy for like a 80-year-old woman who had like died on a missions trip or something, and they were like, oh, it's a tragedy. He goes like, this isn't a tragedy. Like, this person lived their life for Jesus and like died doing what they're supposed to do. No, a tragedy is retiring and going to Florida and spending all your day playing golf and collecting seashells on the seashore and doing nothing else with God's kingdom. That's a tragedy. And so I think about that in some of those moments of like, the worst can happen to me, the worst things could happen to me, but the true tragedy of the true biggest tragedy is to not love Jesus, to not follow him, and all the worst that can happen to me is somehow, some way covered by God's plan. And I have to trust that on somewhere beyond my mental capacity to figure out God is going to be good and figure that out.
Yeah.
I think Corey is anti-collecting seashells, apparently.
Yeah.
Which is really ironic. My mom currently lives in Florida and
Collect seashells?
Shark's teeth.
Shark's teeth.
For the glory of God.
She sends them to my son, and he loves sharks, and it was just like, oh my gosh, there's a shark's
That's
tooth.
awesome.
Yeah, that's great.
So, yes,
That's great.
All right. One last question.
Let's get one more.
Let's do one more. What's a good one? Oh man, yeah, this is a good one. Okay, if you could go back and say one thing to yourself and your wife before your first child was born, what would it be?
Ooh.
And maybe be careful with the one thing you would say to your wife before your child was
Yeah,
born.
Right. It's the thing that I would tell her, and the thing that I would tell her, and I would say I would say it then, and I know I need to say it now, more than ever, is the way we'd phrase it in our family is we say, hey, same team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're on the same team here.
Yeah.
There's a older gentleman at our church here that I was talking to, and he said one of the best ways to be a good dad is to be a good husband.
Yeah.
And if I were to change anything, maybe, I don't know exactly how I would say it, but like in our family's kind of core values way of it, like my wife and I have to remind ourselves like, hey, same team here. Like,
Sure.
and specifically, it's meant to be like, hey, family, like, we are the same team, but like specifically for my wife and I, it'd be like, hey, it's you and I, same team. Love this kid. My aspiration is that he is gone, doing his thing, living life to the glory of God, doing his purpose in life sometime over the next 15 years.
Yeah.
She's going to be with me, hopefully a lot longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do I make sure that relationally my priorities are Jesus, my wife, and then my kids?
Yeah.
And so as much as it's going to feel like, because in this season, our son is so dependent on our time, our vigilance, our efforts. The temptation is to feel like that's always going to be how it is. And again, I've received a lot of encouragement that parenting may not get easier, but the dependence factor certainly does decrease. They learn how to cook breakfast themselves. They know they will eventually learn to drive and transportation and all those things. But man, those promises feel very far off
Mhm.
at
Yeah.
3 a.m. when they're not
Mhm.
sleeping and peeing through
Mhm.
the diapers.
Mhm.
So yeah, to tell myself and to tell my wife, like, hey, it's you and me. First and foremost of all human relationships, it's you and me. And I choose you, I prioritize you, and then to make it happen.
Mhm.
And as much as we love our kids, to make sure they understand the truest of pecking orders of like, hey, I love you, son. I love mama first. You cannot talk to mama like that. You cannot treat mama like that. Like,
Yeah.
or hey, we treat mama like this, or we do this, and hey, honey, I love you, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm not maybe choosing my son over you in the moments where it'd just be easier to let my son annoy my wife so I can get 15 more minutes of sleep. And I'm like, no, this is a moment I need to choose my wife over my son and over myself for
Mhm.
sure. Um, and so, yeah, I'd tell her, hey, same team. We're on the same team here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great answer. When you ask a time travel question, my mind immediately goes to like, okay, can I warn myself about, this thing that's
Yeah.
gonna come up, or oh, don't turn left at this street or whatever. I think short of all those loopholes, I think I would say you have everything you need. It didn't feel like it, but we had everything we needed. And I think a lot of dads are coming from a place of like, if I looked like this, if our family looked like this, if my marriage looked like this, if my income looked like this, like if I just had the right pieces in place, there are lots of dads out there, single dads, divorced dads experiencing grief, dads who are trying to become dads, dads who are estranged from their kids. I don't know those experiences. I just know mine. I can listen certainly to those experiences. But if you have access to the Father, you have what you need.
Mm-hmm.
You have what you
That's good.
need.
Amen.
And no set script of what fatherhood looks like is going to depart from how Jesus can change you and how Jesus can fill the gaps in your inadequacies to give grace to that child.
Yeah.
So, I think even I have a good life. I've got a great partner. We're fundamentally sound in a lot of ways that other people aren't. Even I can kind of suffer under that like if only piece.
Yeah.
I can imagine a lot of other dads out there who are thinking like, gosh, if I just had this or that or the other in place, then I'd be a good dad.
Yeah.
But if you start with the Father who is abundantly gracious in every way and let that change you, that's all you need. It's all you need. Everything else, the thousands and thousands of resources and parenting tricks and strategies and all of that, those are the ingredients you make the recipe with. But all that good stuff, it just comes from the Father. That's all. That's it. That's it. It's all we've ever needed.
It's awesome. Yeah. Reminds me of that psalm, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. And the irony of that is the more you delight yourself in the Lord, the desire of your heart becomes
The
more
Lord.
the Lord, right?
Amen. Yeah.
Amen.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys seriously for coming and being here. This was awesome.
The last thing I want to say is we're young dads, and the one sentence I did not say enough today was I don't know.
Yeah.
I would, maybe y'all should have us again in like 3 years because I'm sure our answer is going to be really different.
Oh.
Yeah.
But we're really grateful for this opportunity for us to say our own piece for our own little limited scope of what fatherhood looks like for us in this season.
Yeah, and every I think that we would all agree that when you think about the dad that you look up to the most, that maybe is not your own dad, but the one that you really admire, that I think is a mark of why you admire them so much, is that they live a life of curiosity and open-handedness and humility of saying, I don't know all the answers.
That's right.
And so, it's the hope that as we continue on in parenting or we become parents, the hope is that we would develop into people that would embody that of being okay with saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or just living with a sense of curiosity. So, like I said, I really appreciate you guys being here. This is awesome. And, as we get closer and closer to Father's Day, I'm just hoping that the people that are tuning into this are really like blessed by this conversation, and knowing that this is just the start of one, we were kind of talking about it before, but there are a lot of things that that aren't spoken about in church, not because out of neglect or anything. We're busy and we don't think to have conversations about things that are really important. This is one of those things that I hope sparks more conversations about young dads and older dads. How do we parent our kids really well so that the next generation is faithful in their relationship with God, and we're good dads, that your kids are sitting in these chairs in 20 years and having these conversations saying, man, my dad was awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So seriously, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
Happy Father's Day, friend.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day.
Well, thank you.
Sweet.
Yeah.